other questions, feel very free to do so. While we wait for some of those, I have a few more, so we'll move on to some of those. A couple of you mentioned the stories of some of the graduates of Marianist Education and some of the ways that they are involved in our church and in our world. That is a way in which Marianist Education is a gift beyond our universities and beyond our own personal experience. Are there other stories you can share of products of Marianist Education who have and who are now and who will continue to be a gift for our church and for our world?
I have so many faces that are now popping in my head, but there's just a number of students that I've met over the years that some, not all, went to a Marianist University, but I met them at Marianist Life in the summer. So Marianist Life as an educational program, and I know we're talking about the universities, but it's such a gift that springboards many of these young teens to consider Marianist universities. And then those of us that are blessed to see them when they come to campus and how they've embraced and connect, more than anything, connect what they learned and how they were transformed during Life Week to what they're experiencing now at the university, and how it then ties into their career of choice, their personal life, how it's evolving, their spiritual development. That is truly a gift. And I know a number of students and now young professionals, now certainly high school students, and some are in some of our Marianist schools, but also campus ministers. I know now, wow, physicians and attorneys that if it weren't for something like Life that springboarded them to our universities, it just helped them articulate and connect everything that they had learned. And then of course, through our involvement and our guidance to help them see how vocation is that God-given gift that they were born with, but within an environment that we've created at the university, they are able to almost experience that aha moment that helps them see that I graduate with this piece of paper at the end of hopefully just 4 years, sometimes a little longer. But it is so much more than that. It is the ethical engineer that knows, the civil engineer that's going to build a bridge that's going to connect two communities. And what comes out of that? It is the business leader in risk management that is thinking about how a company's decisions on whether it's product development is ethical or not, and how that's going to impact whatever community that product is going to be manufactured in. It is, it's humbling and inspiring to see when they get to that point where they make that connection. And they can then attest it to some sort of Marianist connection or Marianist influence that they've received. And sometimes it goes back to what they did before the university, and then it just only gets nourished, and that fire just gets even brighter and stronger while they're at the university.
I've had an experience of talking to some of our graduates of the University of Dayton, and I'll just give one example. I've been encouraging a group of them to develop the Marianist Business Network, and they've actually taken up on that, and they're going to have a retreat at Bergamo for students at UD and graduates of the university to talk about their vocation as business persons and to talk about the role of social justice, and as Jess was suggesting, some of the ethical questions that are in the business. So I just see the fact that, you know, these members of the Marianist family, which were graduates from the University of Dayton, are taking up this challenge of how do we network people after graduation to continue the dialogue of the Marianist charism in their business life.
Jessica Saunders is a graduate of the university and also worked at the Pitt Center. And again, very young woman, but already quite influential at our children's hospital here in town. I believe she's a vice president, serves on many, many boards of nonprofits. And I think, so someone like Jessica really can influence the community and decisions that are made, and also brings this collaborative disposition to the board. She serves on an advisory board in the center as well, and just very open to say, well, how can I connect you with somebody at the hospital when we're talking with Laura Resch, who is the director of Catholic Social Services. So I think, you know, when students have that notion that if I am empowered in some way in my profession, how can I connect dots for the organizations in our community so that we can work together? As many of you know, we faced two terrible tragedies this summer, or well, Memorial Day, and then in August. And I'd heard from a number of folks that people who had come in from other communities to help rebuild after the tornadoes and to try to offer some sense of comfort to those who witnessed a terrible tragedy. They were amazed at the way people in Dayton came together very quickly to try to restore. Not that everything is back as it should be yet, but many were amazed at the response of citizens. And maybe it's I don't have evidence and I don't have absolute proof, but I think ideas of collaboration and of nonprofits working together and trying to do what's best for the children in our community and families in our community really was manifested after those tragedies.
So I teach only the freshmen. I don't really see them through at when they graduate, but you know, Edna Magpante Monroe, who's on with us, her nursing students do a lot of service work during their coursework. And I'm sure that they go on to do great things in the community. And they cannot, oh, she can't hear me.
I can hear you.
Oh, do you want to, okay. Anyway, they go on and do great things in the community. And, you know, a graduate of, well, not a graduate, but Dave attended Chaminade. And then he's come back to lead us. And he's also done a lot of work for Hawaii Swimming, and he's done work with Catholic Services here. So he's another good example of someone who's gone out and made use of their Marianist education in the community.
Great, thanks. We have a couple more questions from you, Gabby.
So this next question is related to Jessica had mentioned previously, and Corinne as well, about the student bodies of Chaminade and St. Mary's University, the makeup of those student bodies as being different from the University of Dayton. And all three of them have a great deal of difference in their student bodies. Can we find ways to learn from one another, ways of linking the three universities more?
One of the things that happens, I think, and again, Tom Giardino has been providing the leadership of the Association of Marianist Universities. Just recently, down in San Antonio, the directors of campus ministry met and shared their experiences of how that's happening. Last year sometime, we had a meeting in St. Louis of all the people around issues of social justice and those type of issues. So I think the Association of Marianist Universities is really trying to do those bridging of the three universities. And I would say that if you have some ideas about where bridging should happen, Brother Tom would be the right person to talk to, because he's very creative and very open to making things happen.
And I know in the past there have been immersion programs, because I know students from all three universities have gone to like inner city Los Angeles, for example. And I believe last year, if not a year and a half ago, a group of different folks actually went down to Juarez and they crossed the border at El Paso just to see what's going on. And to embrace and to really, to appreciate the differences in the demographics, but also then back to the previous question, tying into what's happening in the world in order for these students to really take on not only their degree, but everything they're experiencing in the classroom, outside of the classroom, whether they live on campus or not, and then making it part of their lives moving forward.
I think the Pulse program is another example of the three universities working together, in that the volunteers come from all three Marianist universities, right now just working in Dayton, but if we were so blessed, perhaps that could be, the Pulse program could be in San Antonio and in Hawaii as well. So I think that's a very good example. At the center, we have had 4 Pulse volunteers, and several from St. Mary's, some from Chaminade, and it's just been wonderful to kind of see how they embrace the Marianist charism at UD and are very familiar with it. And you can see it in the work that they do, that they understand the characteristics and bring those to their volunteer work at various nonprofits. We're fortunate to have someone in our ECHO program, which is a group of mental health therapists and a family advocate that work in the Catholic schools in the Dayton area. So I think that's another example of the universities working together.
I would love to see, so I mentioned my students do Marianist essays, and they do that collaboratively. And now with technology, you can do so many things. So they could be working on a Google Doc. So I think what would be kind of neat is if we do some sort of contest where we have Marianist essays from all three universities, or if we could somehow collaborate. So if anybody's out there and is a freshman writing teacher, we can collaborate and see if our students can dialogue across the 3 different universities to create something pretty neat. A lot of my best ideas actually come from the students themselves. So
I'll pass that idea on to Brother Tom Giardino.
Okay.
So as we talk about learning from one another, we know that every university is unique, but in particular, the 3 Marianist universities each have a very distinctive culture. What do you think are the blessings of the culture in which you work, but also the challenges that culture raises in terms of delivering the Marianist charism?
I'll speak perhaps because I've been, again, embracing and really appreciating in such a deep personal way the Hispanic culture down here. I can walk through a campus and speak Spanish freely, and a lot of people are going to know exactly what I say, so I do have to watch what I'm saying. And that was very different from my undergraduate and my years up north. But behind me, you'll see, hopefully, if you can zoom me in. So Our Lady of Guadalupe is behind me in my office for the first time ever. But she's everywhere here. I mean, and our Blessed Mother is, I think, around us in Marianist educational environments in so many different ways. And thank you to the Marianists who have taught many of us what different ways and different images of Mary and how to see her in different light, right? But Guadalupe is here all the time, ever present. Our beautiful community is very, very devoted, and it's traditionally conservative Hispanic, which is a blessing, which is a positive attribute, where it's really fascinating for me to embrace and to be in dialogue with both colleagues and even with students, is that notion, very Marianist, that is that invitation, that intentional collaboration of the lay people embracing the charism, you know, as our own and for ourselves, to truly be in equal playing field as the brothers. Here in St. Mary's, in a very, very respectful way, when you hear the word Marianist, it is only referred to as the brothers and the priests and the sisters. And it's beautiful. And for me, I had to tweak even my taking that in, because in other settings, when you say, someone says Marianist, others may come back to you and say, oh, do you mean religious or lay? Mm-hmm. It's really been really a gift to remind me of the different perspectives of the different cultures, and still the very positive and beautiful ways that the charism is manifested and lived on. But it's been really fascinating to see, and to almost push and kind of nudge a lot more of even some of my colleagues and the students to be like, no, it's okay. You know, we want you to be empowered and to own this charism as your own, and I want you to be the lead planner of this prayer service, and I want you to put this together, and I want you to manifest your faith in collaboration with everybody.
A university is often a contentious place. I mean, I think almost everybody that's a scholar has learned how to think critically, and how I can destroy your argument. Give me a few minutes, and I can undo anything you're trying to say. So I think that, you know, again, these words are from Pope Francis, and that has to do with how do we create a culture of encounter and dialogue. And I think that's a difficult thing to do on a campus. You really have to work at it, and you have to develop the skills. And every class I teach, I have a module on dialogue and encounter, and I call them the virtues of dialogue and encounter, and just try to say to people, we're not going to make the progress we need unless we have these kind of virtues that allow us to dialogue with one another. In the midst of we have a culture of contempt, we have a culture of indifference, we have, it's the environment that our students are going out into is a very fractured, very polarized environment. And I think we have to learn how to be reconcilers and healers and people of hope in that kind of environment.
I like what you said about encounter and dialogue. And at Chaminade, I talked about how we have really engaged in our changes, the Marianist characteristics. But we're also a Hawaiian serving institution. We're here in Hawaii. And I think we are working on developing the Hawaiian characteristics to the extent that we can put both the Hawaiian characteristics and the Marianist characteristics into dialogue with each other. So, you know, unlike Jessica, it would be very unusual to have somebody speaking Hawaiian on campus because for a short time, the language was lost. But if you're thinking about issues of, you know, dialogue and encounter, and you're thinking about Mauna Kea and the 30-meter telescope, that's a great place to talk about how to move forward in terms of a dialogue based around an encounter where you have Hawaiian religious traditions coming into conflict with science. And many of my students are interested in those topics right now. I think one of my students did go up to Mauna Kea. He wasn't arrested, but he did go up to sit with the protesters. So it's an interesting time, and I think we have a lot of great opportunities given our unique position here in Hawaii.
George, I think the question you asked talked about challenges. I think sometimes it's so difficult. Again, maybe it's, you know, it's social media. We just see so many students with anxiety and depression. And I guess I don't know the answer to this at all, but it's just an observation that sometimes students are having trouble getting outside of themselves. And I don't mean to at all minimize what's going on, but sometimes I do get confused about, and I work with a mental health therapist, so, but I guess it's a frustration on my part. I don't know what to do or say to try to help students come to some kind of inner peace with themselves. So we do a lot of work on vocation in first year, because I teach first year as well. And I think sometimes that helps a little bit with sort of figuring out who you are, because we do this focus kind of survey, and students look at, it's actually BIA, it has to do with virtues and sort of saying, these are virtues I believe in, because we want them to start thinking about, what is my vocation? What am I called to do? Some can look at it religiously, some not. And I think that, at least for the students that I've encountered through vocation, that's helping some. But I guess I do worry, and I see that as a challenge, the mental health issues. And I don't know what the solution is. I mean, it'd be overly simplistic, but sometimes I wish there was a way to be more invitational about, have you thought about faith? You know, what are you feeling about God? Because some of our students will come right out and say, as first year students, you know, my family doesn't go to church anymore. Well, we say we're Catholic, but we don't go to mass anymore. And I guess, you know, is that somehow part of the clue to helping the individual students with a lot of their mental health challenges? So that's a challenge for me. I don't really have a very good solution on that.
Thanks, Susan. I think that's true. I think one of the things that is characteristic of our institutions is that they are welcoming and accepting, and that may be at least a good first step at that.
Yeah.
We have time for at least one more of your questions. So Gabby?
So this question is, we are educators of not only our students, but also of our faculty and staff colleagues. In what ways do you see us helping faculty and staff deepen their own understanding of the Marianist charism beyond programs such as the MEA program, for those who may not be able to make the specific commitment of time or who may feel that they aren't Catholic? So in some way, maybe can't understand as well. So people beyond the MEA program, how do you see yourself as educating faculty and staff about the charism?
Well, one of the things I think's really helpful is to take them where their discipline is. So I have an ongoing dialogue with Shelley Amos, who is our director of our Human Rights Center. And I get at her by just talking about human rights. And then I move into how so much of what the human rights language is crosses over with Catholic social teaching, and my ability to tell her there's more congruence than not. And I keep saying to her, I kid her this way. I said, quit using this fact that you're not Catholic. You can't talk about these issues. You're a human rights person, and we're very much in the same language.
Mhm.
So I find if I know my colleagues, I try to find their discipline and how do I bring the issue into their discipline. There's a couple of my engineering friends that do a course on design, and it was very easy for me to sit down and talk about Marianist education, the issues about what I call the complete professional and the ability to come to grips with ethical questions. So I just think you have to start where they are, what they feel strongly about, and then build, in a dialogue fashion.
As much as many people ask, well, what do the MEAs do? Or maybe that's just down here at St. Mary's. But I tend to answer, and I actually got a question like that from one of the brothers living here on campus on Monday night. I was visiting at the residence. It's not about what we do, it's about how we do what we do. So to whether my colleagues have been also helping out with new employee orientation and trying to build on a lot of opportunities for collaboration with the Office of Mission, is to look at the job at hand as that mission, as one of those pillars of Marianist education, of the charism, which is mission, and how the job that you are here to do is your mission. So how you fulfill it, you want to consider, you're invited to consider doing it this way. And this way is in my own way of connecting the dots and filling in a lot of the blanks for those who may not be in a program or have experienced some sort of formal Marianist formation, is to look at the characteristics of Marianist universities and the pillars and make that connection. So Mary, well, how can we be like Mary? How can Mary be our role model of strength, of perseverance, of resilience, of hospitality? And how does that then translate, like Brother Ray said, to their discipline or to their office? How does hospitality play out in the math department? May look a little different than how it plays out in the Office of Admission, but it's still rooted in what we're all about. And it's using a model of an example of Marianist spirituality and education. So I try to find, use the buzzwords as much as I can, but to make it as relatable and relevant to what we do on a day-to-day basis. So to me is, yes, we want to create avenues and programming and retreats and events, but above and beyond, it's really stepping back and reflecting on how it is that we're doing what we're doing on a regular basis. And that's that's at least my most vocal way of inviting others to, again, stop and consider, well, what does it mean to be a Marianist educator? How do I do what I do? And how is it different here than at University of Texas, San Antonio down the street?
Yeah, I agree, Jess. I think a lot of it is trying to be fully present when we encounter each other one-on-one. So some people might think of it, oh, you're just being polite. But, to ask about family or to ask about what someone does outside of their day-to-day work. So I think that's what a lot of people appreciate about working at the university, once they've been for a while. Many people many people will say, I've never worked at a place like this before. People seem to really care about you, you know, fully, not just because you are a colleague in the English department, but because you're another human being, and I want to connect with you. The other thing is, if someone ever says, you know, well, we need somebody to pray, and if no one else will volunteer to pray at the meeting, sometimes I'll offer to pray and try to make it spontaneous. And if I know that there are challenges, try to mention that in prayer, you know, within the department, or for someone who's lost something. So again, just being very personal and authentic about it, not false. That's one of the things I think I've seen at UD.
So just to finish off quickly, because I know we have a couple of minutes. So again, I'm probably the oddball in the group in that I'm not Catholic, nor am I an MEA. But one of my students talked about, and he's a lay Marianist, the round table and everyone being invited to the table. And for me, that's a great symbol, but it's also a great avenue. And so where Brother Ray might start with the discipline and engaging the disciplines, I'm looking at providing the resources. And, you know, I gave a shout out to Dave. I'm going to give a shout out to Val. Val put together a LibGuide of Marianist essays and resources. And so my students love her because they can just go to the LibGuide, right? But Edna, who's also on here, and Dave, Joe Allen, all three who are MEAs, and myself, we're looking to create a Canvas site with all those resources so that faculty who are interested and who want to come to the table can do so and not feel worried about maybe asking a question that everybody else knows the answer to, or not knowing where to start. And so we're looking at moving in that direction so that the faculty who are going to be engaging the characteristics through the Gen Ed also have resources to work with.
Great, thanks. We are just about out of time. The time has really gone quickly. I really want to thank each of our panelists for sharing your stories and your insights and your answers, and also giving us probably as many questions as answers. Thanks to all of you who participated. We really look forward to and appreciate your feedback on this webinar, and to any suggestions you might have for future NACMS webinars or other ways we can be of service to you. The best place to find information about all of our programs, publications, and services is our website, nacmas.org. To all of you, have a great rest of your day or rest of your night. Thanks again for participating. And may the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit be glorified in all places through the Immaculate Virgin Mary. Amen. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.